Hey everybody, welcome back to my Pro Tools video. My name is McKay Tebbs, and today I'm going to be helping you with Pro Tools 110, Lesson 10, entitled More Mixing. Some of the topics we're going to be talking about today include mirroring outputs. You have track outputs, you have ins and outs and sends, and you can mirror those, how to do it and what that is. We're also going to be talking about the output windows in the expanded sends view, and within those output windows there's buttons like the FMP, follow main pan, the link button, the inverse button, the automation save button. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about automation in this video, the different modes of automation: read, write, latch, touch, and we're also going to be talking about edit/mix groups, and how you can use those and access them with keyboard commands. So let's get started. So let's talk first about how to mirror your outputs when you're working in Pro Tools. What it means to have mirrored outputs is it means that you have a track routed to two different outputs instead of just one different output. And you can do this on any track. For example, if I'm taking this track here, here's my output, and I can choose which output I want. In order to mirror your outputs, all you have to do is hold down Control. As you hold down Control, select another additional output, which I just did right here, and notice there's another check mark. Now I have two check marks. I'm going to let go of that, and now I have mirrored that output. It's as easy as that. Hold down Control and select a second output. But let me just show you this new icon here. We have a plus icon. Anytime you see that plus icon, it means that you have mirrored outputs. You have the output of your track going to more than one place. So when is this useful and when might you want to do it? Well, sometimes in a recording studio or recording session, you have different mixes and different people need those different mixes. For example, in the control booth, you might have all the tracks coming into one place, so you want the main mix. But out there in the recording area, you have a vocalist that just wants to hear the, just wants to hear the piano and the bass, and that's all they want to hear in their mix. And so you can create an extra mix that is just those instruments, and you can mirror the output and route that track to two different places and have two different mixes going on at the same time. Now let's talk a little bit about the output windows. Here in my edit window, I can see all the faders, I can see all the panning knobs and various different buttons and things, but I also have the option of seeing the output window for any one of these tracks. And every track has this little slider icon on the side of it, and if you click on it, that's how you open up the output window. And I'd like to emphasize that this output window is actually the same thing as the normal fader that you have there. So it's another option. So why might you want it here? Well, here I am in the mix window, but what if I wanted to go back to work in the edit window, but I still wanted to have that fader available from that track, that mixing fader? So notice how it stays in the forefront of my track even though I'm in the edit window instead of in the mix window. So that can be a very handy thing. These output windows can be a good way, another option for working within your session. And you also have another output window for your sends output windows, and if you click on them, you will open those up. And my sends right now are routed to delay and reverb. I have a delay and reverb effect going on with these. And so you can see my sends output windows. And they have all these buttons on them. They have all these different options. These faders are not the same fader as the main fader that we're moving down here on the track. These faders specifically control the effect that your track is being sent to. So these are called sends, right? And I have one send going to delay, one send going to reverb, and over here, these green tracks on the far right are my delay and my reverb tracks, and so that's where they're being sent to. So when you adjust the fader right here, you're adjusting the amount of that effect. So if I pull it up, I will have more delay in my track. If I pull it down, I'll have less. So let's take a listen. So if I pull it down like this, you can't hear the delay. If I pull it up, suddenly you hear that guitar part repeating itself a lot more. I also want to show you something called the expanded sends view. I'm going to close this output window. If you click on the effect name, you'll get the output window. But if you command click on the arrow right next to it, you get the expanded sends view. So it's an expanded sends view, and what is it? It's an additional fader. It's also additional panning knobs. What do they control? They control the same thing as your sends output window. So notice that now I'm moving that sends output window up and down, and you also see the expanded sends view move up and down. So it's an embedded in your track way to control the effect without having to open up your output window. And the way to do that is by holding down Command and clicking on the arrow. So by command clicking, you can open up the expanded sends view. Let's take a look now at this output window and the buttons that are on it. There are 5 buttons here that you need to get used to. Safe. Safe stands for automation safe. Pre-fader or post-fader. FMP, follow main panner. FMP, follow main panner. Link, it's like 2 chains linked together, the link button, and then finally the inverse button, the inverse pan button. First of all, the safe button, the automation safe mode. Whenever you push the automation safe mode button, it will protect the automation that's on that track, meaning it will not allow you to write over existing automation you may have there. So it's a precautionary thing you can do to protect so you don't accidentally ruin the automation that you've created on your track. Pre-fader, post-fader button routes the signal to be pre-fader or post-fader. What fader are we talking about here? This fader right here, the main fader of the track. So you can route this effect to go into the chain, the signal chain, either pre-fader or post-fader, by pushing that button. FMP, follow main pan. See what happens when you push it? The panning knobs on your output window get grayed out. You can no longer use those panning knobs because they're grayed out. In order to use them, you have to turn it on. But when you have follow main pan enabled, you can go to the panning knobs on the main track, and the panning knobs, they will follow each other. So these panning knobs in the output window will follow the panning knobs on your main track. So that can be handy so that they'll always be the same. The link button is to link both of your panning knobs together. Notice that when I have it enabled, I can twist one knob and move both of them. So I'm going to enable the link button, and now I can move both of them. I also want to emphasize that it moves both of them in similar increments to where they're already set. So if I have the left panning set to 9 o'clock and the top panning is set to 12 o'clock, there's kind of a difference of 3 hours in between. If I put on the link button and start twisting, it will keep that ratio the same. They will always be that same distance in between each other. And that's what the link panning knob can do. The inverse panning knob inverts the panning direction. So if we started out like this, we put the inverse on. It doesn't really do anything, you can't see it, but let's add it to the link. And once it's linked, it will then inversely pan the opposite knob the opposite direction. So if we turn it off for a second and we start both of them kind of over here in the same area and do it, you're going to see them turn still in opposite ways because they're inverted from each other. So in order to get them to turn the same way, you have to turn inverse off, and then you can twist them and they'll both go the same direction. But the inverse button could be very nice if you're the kind of person that starts out with your stereo tracks panned wide like this, and then you want to narrow that gap a little bit, bring them together, maybe bring them to the opposite side. It can be a way that you can work in tandem with both of those panning knobs. The next thing we're going to talk about today is automation modes. Automation modes, and what does it mean to automate something? It means to control the level of an effect or a parameter in Pro Tools. So for example, the volume level. So you can create these predispositions of what you want the volume to be. One way to do automation is to get the pencil tool, and notice that I have my track view editor on volume so I can see my volume line. I can use that pencil tool and I can start drawing in different shapes for my automation that I want to use, and that can always be effective. I mean, that works, but you have to do it one dot at a time. The cool thing about using your automation modes is you can create those dots in real time as you're listening to your song. So if you come over here, you see read mode. Read is the most common mode. Read means that it's going to play whatever automation you have. You will hear it. Off means just what you think it means. It means you've turned the automation off. You're not going to hear the automation play on that track. But you also have touch, latch, and write modes. So what do they do? With touch mode, you can make adjustments on your automation, and after you're done making those adjustments, the automation line will go back to where it was. So you see how this volume is up here where it is. It's kind of up right by this highest mark. So when you're in touch mode, the volume line will always jump back to this highest mark of where it was. And that's the difference between touch and latch mode. When you're in latch mode, you create automation, and then at the end of that, it does not go back to where the line is. It stays wherever you leave it at the end. It latches on to the last place you moved it to. And that's why it's called the latch mode. And then there's write mode, and write mode also allows you to create automation so that you can hear it back. But let's try and create this in real time. Let's go to touch mode, and we'll try out touch mode first. And before we get started here, I am going to open up my output window, and notice that this time I'm in the edit window and I have it open. If I go back to the mix window, it's still there. It's floating in front of both of those windows. But what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the fader up and down as the song's playing, and you're going to watch the line, and you're going to see the automation be written on this blue line as we're going through that process. So I'm going to start by pushing play. I'm going to start adjusting the fader. I'm going to turn it down. You see that red line that's being written? That red line is the automation line. So I'm writing an automation in that I want to use. Now I'm going to let go, and when I let go, watch what happens in the line. Here I let go. As soon as I let go, the red line immediately jumped back up to the blue line, to where the blue line was to begin with. So that's what touch mode does. Touch mode will allow you to touch up a spot and then go back to where it was. So it's a good thing to do if you just have this little spot you're trying to fix, and then you don't want to adjust what's before that or after that. You're just working on this little section of the song. But using automation like this can be really quick, and you're using it in real time, so you're listening to audio cues that are inspiring the way that you pull the fader up and down because you're trying to do something that you're listening to. So that's touch mode. Let's try the other mode now. Let's try latch mode. Let's do the same thing, and at the end, when I'm finished, you're going to see it latch on to the last volume level that I end on. So here is latch mode. Okay, you see the volume level going down there. You see the red line going down. Here it's up. Here it's down. Okay, I'm going to let go now, and I'm letting go. And as soon as I let go, it latches on to the last place I was at. So with latch mode, you can make adjustments. And then when you finish making those adjustments at the end, you let go, and then it will stay at that level that you ended at. Notice that the song's still playing. I'm not making any more adjustments, but you see the red line it's way before. Now I'm going to stop, and now you'll see that that low red line finally went back up to where the blue line is. But that's what latch mode does. Latch mode will latch on to the last place you leave it. So remember, after you're done working with your automation and getting it set, you need to come back to the indicator here and go back to read mode so that it will just be reading your automation and so that you don't accidentally create new automation over the top of that. There's also an automation window that allows you to control aspects of your automation. You can access it by hitting Command 4. So here I am hitting Command 4 over and over again. I'm opening the automation window. So what is this? It's a window that allows you to decide which parameters you want to automate or write enable. You know, we can automate the volume, we can automate the panning, you can automate the mutes. There's also this suspend button at the top, and if you push suspend, it will suspend all automation in your session, basically get rid of it, and then you can unsuspend it by pushing the button again, and your automation is back. Automating your tracks is kind of the last thing you're going to do, or one of the last things you do in your session, because once you start automating, you can't adjust the faders anymore. The faders are set to what they've been programmed to do with the automation. So usually you don't want to do that until you have the faders set exactly where you want them. But if you do need to suspend the automation for whatever reason, you can do it by clicking the suspend button here in the automation window. Command 4 will close it out. You can also access the automation window by coming up to the window menu and then scrolling down to where it says automation and selecting it there. Let's talk a little bit about mix and edit groups. This is something you should be familiar with from the Pro Tools 101 class, but here in the bottom left corner it shows you your groups. Right now I just have one mix group, my guitars mix group. So to create a new mix group, you're going to push Command G. That's the keyboard command to create a new mix group. So let's create a new mix group. This time let's do it let's try all my MIDI tracks. So I'm gonna entitle this MIDI for the MIDI mix group, and I'm gonna take my MIDI tracks and I'm gonna put them all in over here. Now, I wanna draw your attention to the ID in the top. This ID is a way of identifying your group and quickly turning your group on and off, or activating and deactivating it. Notice that it defaults to the first letter of the alphabet. So that means if you push the A key, then it would enable and disable this group. But since my group is called MIDI, I think I want to find the M key, M for MIDI, and I'm going to have that be the ID. So M is going to be my ID indicator for this group. So after I select M there, I'm just going to push OK. And now you're going to see that I created a new group. It's called MIDI, and there's an M for it. Above that I have the guitars group with a G next to it. See this A to Z? That is the keyboard focus. In order to have these letters work to activate and deactivate, you have to have the keyboard focus selected. There's 3 keyboard focus, one here in the group, one here above the edit, and then one here above the clips. So you can click on it with a mouse to activate it or deactivate it, but there is a shortcut. The shortcut for keyboard focuses is Option Command 1, Option Command 2, and Option Command 3. Option Command 1 brings your keyboard focus to the edit window. Option Command 2 brings your keyboard focus to the clips list, and Option Command 3 brings your keyboard focus to the groups list, and that's the one we want. So push Option Command 3, or just click on it there, the A to Z button, the keyboard focus. All right, but now that I have that selected, I can push the M key, and I can turn on and off that group that I just created. I can also push the G key and do the same thing for the guitar group. So by pushing M and G, I can manage those 2 groups and turn them on and off. Let's create another group. This time let's put all of our aux tracks in a group. I have 4 aux tracks here, and I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to call this group aux tracks. And as far as an ID goes, I think it might be a good idea just to leave it as A for aux tracks. That's easy for me to remember, so I'll remember A for aux tracks. And so now I have a third group created, A for aux tracks. I can start pushing that A button to turn it on and off. Works great. So another thing that I can do is I can control click on top of the name of each group. And if you hold down control and click on top of the name of the group, it will only show that group in your edit window. It will only show the tracks that are in that group. So control click over the top of your group names will only show those groups to work on. And one more thing is here in the edit window, I can see all my tracks. If I move the faders while they're in groups, it's always going to move the group tracks together. The faders will always be the same. So in order to break out of that or suspend the group, I need to do what's called clutching. And clutching is where you push control and then you drag a fader and then you free that fader from the rest of the group. So the group is intact, it's activated, but I'm holding down control and I'm dragging a slider to break it out of the group for a moment, and then you let go of control and then it's back in the group. So that's called clutching. You're clutching a track, just like when you're driving a car and it has a clutch in it and you're using it to shift gears. You just push that clutch in for a second, you shift the gear, and then you let go, and then the car keeps running. And the last thing I want to bring your attention to are the dots over here. Each dot, or sometimes there's not a dot, means a different thing, and it has to do with what tracks are selected. So if there's no icon here, like the guitars and MIDI tracks have, if there's no icons, that means there's no tracks selected. If there's a circle icon, that means some tracks are selected, but not all. If there's a dot icon, it means that all members of that group are currently selected. And the last one is a dot with a circle around it. And if you see a dot with a circle around it, it means all members of that group are selected and other tracks. So it goes from nothing to a circle to a dot with a circle around it. Let's talk now about another good technique to know when you're mixing, and that's called using folder tracks. Folder tracks can be used to store groups of tracks in, and you can open and close them, but they can also be used to do routing on. So sometimes it can be a lot of work to have to sometimes it's a lot of work to add a routing folder in later on in your session, because then you have to go and you have to rework the inputs and outputs of the routing folder and the tracks you want in there, so that they will all work together, so that you can use that routing folder to control the tracks inside. But there is a way to route tracks to a routing folder and have the routing automatically be incorporated into the routing folder without having to go through and set all the outputs and inputs. I'm going to show you that really quick. First thing you do is you select the group of tracks that you want to include in the folder. So I'm going to select these 4 tracks here, and then you're going to right click. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to scroll down to where it says move to, and then here it has one option, move to new folder. I'm going to select that, and when I do that I get something that basically looks like create a new track. Like I'm creating a new track. I kind of am. I'm creating a new folder track with this. But there's also this option down here, and it says routing folder, route tracks to new folder. If you make sure to leave that option enabled or checked, then when you do that, all of your tracks are going to be automatically routed to this new folder, and this new folder will be able to control them. So I'm going to push create, and there I have a folder track, and it's automatically got those 4 tracks routed in and out of it. If I come over here to the edit window and look at it, I'll see that the input of this folder track is folder 1.1, and when I look at those guitar tracks, they all have their output set to folder 1.1. So it did that automatically just because, just by the way we just created it. So that can be a good way to quickly route all your tracks to a folder track when you're working with folder tracks. Alright, well, thanks for coming and watching this video today. I appreciate it, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.